Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today I'm showing you a recipe that I invented, and even though I sort of technically invent all my recipes, this one to me feels unique in a way that like all my other recipes are not, because I think it's something that has never been made before. Someone fact check me. It is a custard cake, and I will explain what that means, but basically it takes what we love about flan or creme caramel or custard and tres leches cake and puts them together, and it's like kind of an involved recipe, but it's pretty special. I think a lot about the creative process and like how I get ideas, and the truth is that they just can come out of nowhere. So Harris and I were on vacation, and we were literally just like walking, like pushing a stroller, and we were talking about tres leches cake, and it just like came to me of, because Harris was saying that like sometimes what he doesn't like about tres leches is how like liquid the soak is, and I was like, what if you soaked tres leches instead of it just like a milk mixture? What if you soaked it in custard and then baked it again, and you got this kind of like matrix of like wobbly, eggy custard inside of a sponge cake? And that's how this recipe idea was born. It is a special thing that happens not that often, is that like the thing in my mind, like in real life, is exactly how I imagined it. The whole thing is really textural, and then it's scented and flavored with vanilla. So the whole thing has this like amazing perfume, and it's this just incredible combination of like texture and flavor, which is what all good dishes are. For the ingredients for this cake, there's three main components. There's the sponge cake, there is a caramel layer on the bottom, and then there is the custard. So it's kind of all the same ingredients for like all the components. For the cake, for the sponge cake, and this is a style of sponge cake called a genoise, which I don't think I've made before, and it's a great cake to show you, so I'm excited. I have 6 whole eggs, granulated sugar, all-purpose flour, some melted cooled butter, a little bit of salt, and some vanilla extract. So that's going into the sponge. For the caramel layer, I have more granulated sugar. And then for the custard, 2 cups of heavy cream, 2 cups of milk. I have a little bit of extra salt, some demerara sugar. Half a vanilla bean is going to go into the custard, and then I have 6 yolks and 2 whole eggs. Special equipment. This is a little bit of an involved recipe, and it requires quite a bit of technique. You need a decent amount of special equipment. I'm using a stand mixer with a whisk. You really, really need that for the genoise. So we're going to like beat the eggs like crazy. I have a saucepan, which I'm going to use several times. I'm going to use it for actually all 3 components, for the sponge, the caramel, and the custard. A strainer for sifting. This is called a skimmer. This is like a fantastic tool for folding. I'll show you. I have a cooling rack, another whisk, an instant read thermometer, an extra bowl for the custard, and then I have a 9-inch cake pan. This is high sides. This is 3-inch sides, and I have lined it with a piece of parchment paper, but I have not greased the parchment, and I have not greased the sides of the pan. The parchment is an insurance policy. You almost don't even really need the parchment on the bottom, but you don't want to grease pans for sponge cake because it needs some traction with the sides to like climb and cling to the sides so that it doesn't collapse as it bakes. So the first thing we're going to do is make the sponge. Again, it is a style of sponge cake called a genoise, which is literally like a sponge that will absorb a ton of liquid and flavor. So I'm going to start with that, get everything cleared off, and my oven is already on 350 for baking. Before I get into the recipe, I want to thank our friends at Heilala for sponsoring this episode. Heilala is the only vanilla I have in my kitchen. It is made from beans grown in Tonga, where they are hand-picked, dried in the sun. There's a cold extraction process used to extract maximum flavor from the beans. And what I love about Heilala also is that they invest in the community. It's a certified B Corp and just an all-around great company. I love having it at home because it goes into so many of my baked goods, especially the paste, which is an incredible product. It has the whole seed suspended in a vanilla extract, and it gives you all of the flavor of a vanilla bean, but just like right out of the container. You can just like use it in a squeeze bottle. I'm adding it to the custard cake I'm making today. It just infuses the entire thing with the most incredible vanilla aroma. I also just love the extract for all my cake batters and cookies. I use it in my favorite recipe of all time, my chocolate chip cookies, and it just contributes like the most incredible vanilla butterscotchy caramelized flavor. So if you've watched a lot of my videos, you've probably seen me adding vanilla paste or extract to a lot of recipes from squeeze bottles that I have behind me. Heilala is what's inside those squeeze bottles. It makes a fantastic gift, so stock up for the holidays or give it to your favorite baker. Check out their entire range of products, but especially the paste and the extract. I love the vanilla sugar. Go to the link below. You can get 20% off your order. Check out their whole line of products, but I especially recommend the paste and the extract. It's just great for all of your holiday baking. So thank you to Heilala, and now let's get back to the recipe. So we're gonna start with whole egg, which is kind of something that sets it apart from a lot of other sponge cakes where you like separate the whites and the yolks and then whip the whites. So I have 6 whole eggs. I'm gonna get them into my mixing bowl. This is definitely a recipe where you need a stand mixer. It's like this, I don't even think there's really many hand mixers on the market that would have the kind of power to beat the amount of air into the eggs that this cake requires. So what's also kind of unique and cool about genoise is that the mixture is warmed, and that helps to dissolve the sugar. There's just a lot of cool technique with this recipe. So I have a large saucepan of steaming water. It's not quite at a boil. We don't want it to be boiling. I really like that it uses whole eggs because there's so many things in baking where it's like you're left over with either whites or yolks, usually whites, and it's just nice that it's whole eggs. Although we're gonna have a lot of egg whites when it comes time to the custard because that's mostly yolk. But then you'll have to just make some meringues or angel food cake or something. Okay, so now to this I'm going to add our granulated sugar and salt. Just a little bit of salt, a pinch, you don't have to really measure. And then sugar, everything for this recipe is in grams because I converted it from my like pastry school recipe, which is all in grams and like doesn't like nicely fit into cups. So best to use a scale for this recipe. It's 188 grams. So we're gonna start to whisk this together. And I'm just using a regular whisk and doing this part by hand, and then we're gonna plug it into the stand mixer. But what we wanna do is warm this over the double boiler, and I'm gonna whisk constantly. So I have an instant read thermometer here. And again, I'm not letting this water come up to even a simmer. It's just a kind of gentle heat. Now I'm doing this in a glass bowl. Glass is not a great heat conductor, so this tends to take a little longer than if you were using a metal bowl, which is a good heat conductor. So the idea here is that I wanna work in a lot of air, and I wanna warm this up to about 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have my thermometer here just so I know. So warming it helps to dissolve the sugar. You just get like really, really nice volume in the eggs when you whip them and a really, really stable foam. And that's what we want. With sponge cake where the leavening all comes from eggs, there's no like baking powder, baking soda. And here you really want a mixture with a lot of air that's also as stable as possible, meaning it's not gonna collapse. So I'm just gonna sit here and whisk this. This should take like a good 5 minutes or so to come up to temp, maybe even a little longer. This mixture has become nice and frothy. It has gained in volume a bit, and I'm gonna take the temp. So we're at 111, 12, 13, okay. So I can pull this off of the heat. And you're warming the mixture. It's not getting anywhere near hot enough to like that you're gonna cook the egg, but just you want to just keep it moving no matter what. They can get rid of the water here. I'm gonna hold onto the saucepan because we're gonna use it later. But I'll just kind of move this out of the way. And then let's bring in the stand mixer. So I'm gonna pop this into my stand mixer. Okay. And start to whip this. This is why you want the stand mixer, because we're gonna whip this. It's going to like quadruple in volume. I'm kind of starting off on more medium and increasing the speed to high. We're gonna beat this until it's like almost at the top of the whisk, and it's like super thick and light and stiff and makes this beautiful ribbon as it falls off the whisk. So this is gonna take a few minutes. So you really want to beat this until the egg foam is room temp. There's a tiny bit of warmth here, but I think it's done. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. You can see that the volume has like really increased and it's super thick. And when it falls off the whisk into what we call a slowly dissolving ribbon. So that means that it kind of sits on the surface and then eventually kind of settles and like disappears back into the mixture. So now I'm going to actually just quickly beat in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I love the squeeze bottle of vanilla. Vanilla is one of those things where I'm like, my attitude is like, if some is good, then more is better, generally. So the squeeze bottle, sometimes I'm like, oh, it's 2 teaspoons. And it's like, I definitely put more than that, but that's because it's so good. So I'm done with this whisk. I'm going to remove the bowl from the mixer. And now we're going to fold the rest of it by hand. And this is where the skimmer comes in so handy. I don't know why I don't use this more. So we're going to sift in the flour. Sifting is really important. I almost never sift it except for things like this where lumps are really, really common. So I have just all-purpose flour. I have a fine mesh sieve, and I'm going to sift in about 1/3 of the flour right over the surface. And now I'm going to use the skimmer to fold it in. So the skimmer is just so good at getting down into the bottom of the bowl and turning everything. And you can see that the foam is like so, it's a really, really fine foam, meaning that the air bubbles are really tiny. And it's like nice and dense and just really, 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 really beautiful. Okay, so another 1/3 of the flour, about 50% of what's remaining. And you want to sort of try to work somewhat quickly because eventually the foam will begin to collapse, especially the more that you fold it. Make sure you're getting down into the bottom of the bowl. You don't want any flour falling into the bottom and then staying there. So now I'm going to do the rest of the flour. The idea here is something really, really light with tons of air in it because the idea is that the custard fills in all those little air gaps in your sponge, and that's what's going to give it this incredible texture. So now I'm folding that final amount of flour in. And once I start to see the flour mostly disappear, I'm going to start to stream in my butter. So this is 40 grams, it's like about 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter that's melted and cooled. And I'm going to just kind of stream it in a little bit at a time, folding as I go. And now I'm just going to continue to fold with the skimmer. See, there's like a little pocket of flour that's unincorporated. So I just want to make sure that I have this really even mixture. And now that I see everything is folded together, I'm going to grab my cake pan. Now I'm actually going to switch to my spatula because I want to scrape everything into my cake pan. So again, this has a round of parchment on the bottom, but none of the sides are greased. And I'm going to give everything a once over with the spatula because this is going to help me scrape the sides and make sure it's really even. At this point, you want to work pretty quickly to get this into the oven because now that we've added the fat, you're on the clock a little bit. So get this into the pan and we're going to put all of it in. It's a relatively large amount of batter, but we're going to trim the sponge. So it's nice to start off with like a big generous layer. Make sure your oven is preheated. We're on 350. One thing I do is I can see that there's some really big air bubbles in here. So I'll often like tap the mixture on the countertop to pop any really large bubbles. You just smooth the top. And this is going to go into my oven, and this bakes relatively quickly. It's like 20 to 25 minutes, and we want the surface to be golden brown and risen and a cake texture to come out clean in the center. I'm cutting a corner a little bit, which is, I have the exact identical cake pan, and normally when I've made this, I just use the same cake pan from baking, but we're just going to speed things up again. In the recipe, you bake the cake, you let it cool, you unmold it, and you use the same pan for assembling it. But I'm just using an extra pan so we can kind of move things along. The cake is still in the oven. I'm making a dry caramel, and this is the same step that you would do if you're making like a crème caramel or flan at home, where you do caramel on the bottom and then the custard goes on top and you bake it and turn it out. So I have 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. I have my same saucepan that I used for the double boiler. I have it on medium. And this is a dry caramel. It's meaning I don't add any water. I just basically melt and caramelize the sugar. I don't dissolve it first and make like a syrup. So there's some advantages to that. Mostly is that you can stir it and it's not going to like crystallize on you. If I were to just add all the sugar at once, you can do that. But what happens is like the bottom layer melts and starts to get dark, and then the top layer is still granulated. And so I think that the best technique is to sort of add thin layers in like a thin, even layer to the bottom of the saucepan. Let it start to melt. If it's starting to get dark in certain places, I'll give it a little bit of a stir just to kind of even it out. You can decrease the temp. And then once I have most of the sugar added, I'll just add the rest of it. So I'm going to continue to cook until this is like a deep, dark amber. And then we're going to pour it immediately into our clean cake pan. So this caramel is obviously liquid. It's super, super hot, but as it cools, it's going to harden. So that's why you want to try to work somewhat quickly to get it while it's still fluid to like fill in the bottom of the pan. One thing that's a really, really useful tip is if your caramel hardens before it's really coated all the surfaces, you can actually throw it in a relatively hot oven, like a 325-degree oven, and it will basically melt and like it will heat up the caramel again to the point where you can spread it around. So here we have coated the bottom fully. I'm going to set this aside to cool. The whole pan is super hot. That caramel is like, 300 something degree caramel. I'm going to set this aside, and now I think my sponge is done. I'm going to pull that out of the oven. You'll know that it's done when it's starting to pull away from the sides a little bit. The center is nice and springy to the touch. You can see it's really golden brown and even, and the cake tester came out clean. So again, we are going to cool this upside down. Custard is one of my favorite things to eat. It's so delicious. It's basically dairy and eggs and sugar. So this one we're gonna scent with the vanilla bean. Whenever I want vanilla to be the focus, I'll use a bean, but paste is also a great product. So this is a jar of Heilala Vanilla paste. It basically is like the seeds suspended in a kind of extract. You can use either one, or you can just use like an extra squeeze of vanilla extract if you like. So this custard is a mix of milk and heavy cream. I have 2 cups of each. I'm gonna get that into the same saucepan, and I don't need to wash it. There's some caramel residue in there, but it's just gonna dissolve and make it more delicious. So with custard, often you have a step of heating the dairy first, and that's a great opportunity to infuse it with flavor. So this is where I'm gonna add my vanilla bean because I wanna infuse it with all of that flavor, not just from the seeds, but from the pod itself. So let me get that in. And actually my eggs can go into this bowl, so I'm gonna do that real quick. So these are my eggs. These are my 2 whole eggs and 6 yolks. Now to my dairy, I'm gonna add a pinch of salt, and I'm gonna scrape my vanilla. This is a half of a vanilla pod. So you cut a slit down lengthwise, but I don't cut all the way through. I just cut through. Imagine the bean like what's a pod that has like a soft center? Like a banana. Imagine the bean is like a banana. You're cutting through like one side of the peel, but not the other. I open it up, I put one finger on the end, and then I use the dull side of the knife to scrape. From the inside of the pod, I get this great yield of these tiny little specks, and these are the vanilla seeds. I hate wasting it because vanilla is so precious and difficult to grow, so I don't waste any of it. So I have the pod and the seeds. Those are both gonna go into my dairy mixture. And even after I'm done infusing the custard, I save that empty pod and I add it to my homemade vanilla. So I'm gonna get this over like a medium heat. I don't wanna bring it to a boil. I want to just warm it up. It's gonna kind of start to steam. It's gonna be just under a simmer. And that's gonna help, it's gonna do 2 things. It's going to kind of like extract the flavors of the vanilla and the pod, and it's gonna infuse it with this great vanilla flavor and aroma. And it's also going to make the dairy mixture hot so that I can add it to the eggs and dissolve the sugar. So I'm gonna give this a whisk just to disperse those vanilla seeds. So while this is warming up, I'm now going to mix together my eggs and my sugar. I'm using Demerara sugar. You could just use granulated. It isn't that much of a difference, but I just really like Demerara sugar with vanilla. This is a half a cup. I'm gonna add it to my eggs and start to whisk this. We're not cooking this custard. This is a baked custard, not a stirred custard. So a stirred custard, like a lemon curd, for example, or like a pudding or pastry cream, that's cooked on the stove, but this is we're just using it to heat up the milk, and then everything gets baked in the oven. So you can see that this mixture is kind of thickening, it's getting foamy. So this is now steaming. I'm gonna turn it off. My eggs are looking good. I'm now going to stream my milk mixture into my eggs, and this is called tempering. This is going to slowly raise the temperature of the eggs. We want this mixture to be warm so that the sugar dissolves. This mixture isn't that hot, but it's hot enough that it would cook the eggs if I added it too quickly. So by slowly adding it and whisking, I'm just gently raising the temperature of the eggs. And then I've added more than half. I can just kind of dump all the rest of it in. Make sure that you get all of those vanilla seeds into the custard, and as well as the pod, because I'm gonna let this mixture is just gonna sit here until we're ready to assemble everything, and I want the flavors of the pod to infuse as much as possible. So whisk this really well, and again, the priority here is that we are dissolving the sugar. But for now, we're done. We're gonna set this aside, and we're really just waiting on the cake to finish cooling. So the cake has cooled. I'm gonna unmold it. So I'm gonna turn it back over. I have a little offset spatula, so I'm gonna cut around the sides, and I like using the spatula because it's flexible, so I can really leverage it, like pressing it against the sides to get a clean cut. Okay, and now I have that parchment underneath. This will be easy to unmold. So I'm gonna take it out of the pan. This is a really, really nicely baked sponge. There is always, especially when you're baking a sponge in a round that's relatively tall, you'll always get some sinking. And that's why we have a generous amount of cake so that I can level everything and get like an even piece of cake. And the really important thing about leveling is we're gonna do it on the top and bottom. And the idea there is to expose the crumb and to give the soak maximum surface area to be absorbed into the cake. By soak, I mean the custard. So I'm gonna start with this on, I'm gonna turn it over and get it on my surface. I have a serrated knife. This part is tricky. I wish I had a longer serrated knife because it's like a big cake. So to do this, the best way to do it is to kind of start sawing all the way around and then go clean across. So I'm gonna start by inserting the knife just under the top edge, kind of moving the knife as I go, maintaining the same depth all the way around. And then I'm a lefty, and so I can't really cut from the right side, so I'm going to move the cake. Okay, so now once I've gone all the way around, I have that line as my guide. And hold the knife really, really steady. Make sure it's parallel to the surface. And I just do this kind of fine sawing motion back and forth. And I'm gonna go through the entire cake. Did I do it evenly? We'll see. I often have to go back and do some like further trimming to make sure it's even. First of all, look at the color. It's like fluorescent. This is not bad. It's a little uneven, so I can go back in with a knife to try to level it further. It's okay if one side is not perfectly flat. You need one good cut surface, and then the other side can be like a little bit wonky, which is okay. All right, so I leveled that side. You can see that the crumb is this like beautiful, like airy. There's like tons of little air pockets, and so that's good. It got nice and tall. It didn't collapse. It looks really, really good. So I'm gonna flip this over, and I'm gonna do that to the other side. The point of doing this is see how this side that was in contact with the parchment is like smooth and kind of sealed and browned. The custard is not going to be able to penetrate that very well. So we take off the top. Not bad. I'm going to fix this a little bit. There's some unevenness here. So pick the nicer surface, and that's what's going to go, the nicer surface is going to go down into the pan in contact with the caramel. So I'm just doing some final leveling here. So here I have my caramel in my clean cake pan. I am going to get my cake into the pan. So again, the smoother, more even side is going to go down. So that goes right in. This cake here, this is like scraps for snacking on. This part's fun. We're going to poke a ton of holes, same like if you're making a tres leches cake. So I have a skewer right here. I'm gonna bring over my custard. My custard is still warm, which is good. And I have a little strainer here. So I'm going to just use a skewer. You can use a toothpick. I like the skewer because it's a little bit thicker. And I'm gonna poke a ton of holes, a lot of, like all over. And I'm poking all the way down until I hit the caramel, which at this point is like totally solid. It's like a piece of glass. And it's okay if you like disturb any crumbs on the surface. Like normally poking this many holes and then pouring custard over it, you would be worried about compromising the kind of like structure of the cake. But the whole thing as it bakes is going to like become suspended in this custard. So it's like, I'm not actually worried about that at all. You want to, in fact, sort of, you really want to introduce like a lot of holes into it. So now I'm going to strain my custard over the sponge. I can't see. Am I getting it through the strainer?
You kind of missed.
Kinda. Close enough. So pour all the custard over, and it's going to seem like a lot of liquid, which it is. But the idea is that as it sits, it's all going to get absorbed into the cake. Vanilla pod to add to my homemade vanilla extract. I just have all these vanilla bean like seeds stuck in the bottom of the bowl, so I'm going to scrape those in. And now this is going to sit. So what ends up happening is the sponge is so light that the excess liquid, the excess custard is dense. That sinks to the bottom. And so the sponge kind of like floats on top. It literally looks like a sponge. And I have some pooling custard. So we want to let this sit so that the cake has time to like fully absorb the custard. It's going to pull the custard into the center and be like fully hydrated all the way through. I'm going to cover and let it sit overnight in the fridge. Overnight is best, but if you make this in the morning, you could bake it in the afternoon. Like I would say at least 4 hours. And we're going to keep it in the fridge because obviously we're working with dairy and eggs that have been heated. So, you know, just for like food safety, it should be cold. Now I have a swap that I made last night. So this is going to get covered. I'm going to pop it in the fridge, but I have one that I made already. So here it is. You can see that, and I've actually taken it out of the fridge so that it's a little bit more room temp. That's going to help it bake faster. I should have taken it out earlier. It's still a little bit cold. It's no longer floating. The cake has fully absorbed the custard, and there's like a little bit of pooling custard, but basically it's like the right proportion where the cake is fully saturated, but it's not like floating. So that's what you want. And this is actually ready to bake. So this has been resting for a long time. Let's get it in the oven. Now this needs a water bath. So anytime you're doing a baked custard, you almost always need a water bath. Cheesecake, creme brulee, whatever it is. And the water bath helps to cook everything really evenly, because with eggs, what ends up happening without a water bath is the outside overcooks before the center has a chance to fully set. So I'm gonna grab, I have a roasting pan. I'm gonna grab that. You need a pan large enough to fit the cake pan. So this one really just fits. I have like a couple centimeters of clearance on either side. This now needs to get covered. My oven, I have a rack in the center. My oven is on 325. I'm going to cover the cake. With some foil. And now I have a kettle of water that I brought to a boil. I'm going to grab that. With a water bath, it can feel really dicey, especially if you're using something with lower sides or like creme brulee dishes, which are really shallow. And you have this like sloshing water that can easily kind of like jump the sides and slosh onto your hand or the floor. This is better. We only really need the water to come a third to a half of the way up the sides of the cake pan. So I'm going to pour this in. This is just boiled water. And the idea is that the water moderates the temperature around the sides of the pan so that it never gets above basically 212. This is just going to help with really even baking. Okay, this looks good. I'm gonna add a little bit more. And now we're going to very carefully transfer this to the oven rack. I probably should have let this temper a little bit more so that it wasn't going into the oven cold. Because the center is still a little bit cold from the fridge, this is gonna take a really long time to bake. So it's gonna go for like, I would guess this is gonna take an hour. But I have my instant read thermometer, which is gonna help us know for sure when the center is set. The first time I made it, I underbaked it because I was like, it has to be done, but it really wasn't. So we just want the eggs to be fully cooked in the center so that when we cut into it, we have this like wobbly but set texture. Okay, so into the oven, 325 on the center rack, very carefully. You don't want to spill any water. Okay. Okay. I'll probably check it after 45 minutes or so. So I'll set a timer. This is a recipe where I want to be really certain about the temperature in the center, so I'm using an instant read thermometer. It's not a recipe where I feel comfortable relying solely on like visual and touch indicators. So we basically want to bake it until the center registers 170. And that's how I know the eggs are going to be cooked. This really baked for an incredibly long time. It has been almost 2 hours, just about 2 hours. And again, if I let it come to room temperature, it would have baked faster. But I just temped the center and it was at just 170. So that it's ready to come out. I'm gonna bring it over here. So let's take the foil off and just take a look. Ooh, it looks really good. See how there's like a little jiggle in the center? Hopefully that means that the center will be completely set. Again, the first time I made it, I undercooked it a little bit. So there was like some more liquid custard, which you don't want because then it's like raw egg. But this looks really good. So I'm gonna take it out of the water bath. And again, if I had just left this in there for 2 hours, well, it would have baked a lot faster without the water bath, but if I had just done it without the water bath and left it until the center was 170, the outside would be way overcooked. So that's what the water bath does, is it keeps everything really even and prevents overcooking. See that wobble? Oh my gosh, this looks so good. Okay, so I need to let this cool. And before I unmold it, I need to chill it. So again, kind of a long process. Like we did an overnight rest so that the cake could absorb the custard. And now we need to let it cool down in the fridge for like at least a few hours. So I'm gonna stick it in the fridge and then we'll come back and unmold it, which is like the very most exciting part. And then we're gonna taste it. So let it cool until it's not so hot and then pop it in the fridge. So the cake has been chilling. I think it's probably been like 2 hours. And I think it's long enough. I don't wanna wait longer because I'm so excited to try it. So I'm gonna pull it from the fridge and we're gonna unmold it and taste it. So taking it from the fridge, the bottom is nice and cold. So I'm pretty sure, I think we're good. It's so yellow, so many yolks. So now I wanna cut around the cake using this offset spatula. The offset spatula is flexible, so I'm really like flexing it against the side of the pan. Oh, did you see that? As soon as I cut all the way around, there was like a little pooling caramel. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Okay. Let's flip it over. I just felt it drop. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so excited. It looks so good. All right, I'm gonna cut a piece. This is the coolest thing I've ever made. I'm so excited. One thing I want to point out, there is it's subtle, but there is a slight like kind of raised area in the center of the cake. And what I'm almost certain that is like a little bit of custard that pooled underneath the cake because the cake is so light and didn't fully absorb into the cake. And so next time I make this, I might consider putting like a little bit of a weight on top of the cake when I bake it. And then I will have this like mirror finish all the way around, but like whatever, it still looks so good. So I'm gonna cut a slice. I love how it makes its own like little sauce with the caramel. The cutting it is so satisfying. It feels, I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Is it cake or is it custard? It's both. It's Harris's secret option C, both. Why choose? Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Oh, there's actually it's a much thicker layer of custard there than I thought. It's fully set in the middle. There isn't any like liquid custard that didn't bake. So that's why we tempt it to make sure. And it's like a little bit more done around the edges and in the center, but overall it's like pretty even in its bake. And again, I have that like little layer of custard on top, but I'm not upset about that at all. All right, I'm gonna try it. This is definitely a spoon dessert. Oh my God. I think the sweetness is right there. It has that combination of like dairy and vanilla is so magical. So good, but also so rich. There's so many eggs in this dessert and like so much dairy. This makes me feel like I'm a pastry chef. Like I consider myself a home baker, but when I make stuff like this, I'm like, should I open a restaurant? Because like this would be so good on a dessert menu. It is so good, and I can't really describe it other than to say you should just really try it. If you love custard and you love sponge cake, like this is your dessert. And if you love the kind of like unique flavors of vanilla, I'm really proud of myself. Obviously drawing a lot of inspiration from like classic flan, crème caramel, and tres leches cake. So I think if you're going to make this recipe, definitely invest in a high quality vanilla like Heilala. It is baking season, so you might want to just stock up anyway because of all the baking that you're going to be doing with like holiday desserts and cookies. So if you go to the link in the description below, you can get a discount off your order from Heilala. I really, really love their paste. It's such an amazing product, so highly recommend that. But of course, their supply of beans and extracts are just, I think, the best on the market. So I hope you check them out. I want to thank Heilala for sponsoring this episode. Happy holidays. Don't forget to like and subscribe.